If you're a pop culture junkie who loves TV, film, music, comedy, and other really important stuff, then you've come to the right place. Get ready and settle in for Classic Conversations, the best pop culture interviews in the world. That's right, we circled the globe so you don't have to. If you're ready to be the king of the water cooler, then you're ready for Classic Conversations with your host, Jeff Dwoskin.
All right, Mary, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. You get the show going each and every week, and this week was no exception. Welcome, everybody, to episode 310 of Classic Conversations. As always, I am your host, Jeff Dwoskin. Great to have you back for what's sure to be the most historic episode in the history of Classic Conversations. With me today is author Marc Myers, arts and music contributor to the Wall Street Journal, and TV theme and music historian. Going deep into some beloved TV theme songs. You're going to love it, and that's coming up in just a few seconds. And in these few seconds, if you love Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, if you love Family Affair, Johnny Whitaker was here last week. That's right, Jody from Family Affair. Great conversation. Do not miss that. But right now, hopefully you're in the mood for classic TV, because we're talking about Bewitched, Leave It to Beaver, Gilligan's Island, Room 222, That Girl, Mary Tyler Moore. We're diving into the TV theme songs of these classics, the evolution of them, the history of them. So much goodness from Marc Myers, and that's coming up right now.
I'm excited to introduce my next guest, arts and music contributor at the Wall Street Journal and author of Anatomy of 55 More Songs, the oral history of top hits that changed rock, R&B, and soul. He's a TV theme historian. He loves jazz. Please welcome to the show, Marc Myers.
Jeff, it's so great to hear your voice.
Marc, how are you?
Good. It's great being with you. I mean, what a podcast you have.
Thank you, Marc. I love the spelling of your name. That's how my dad spelled it. You don't see many Marcs with a C.
Conceived in Paris. I was conceived in Paris. That was the last thing my mother did when they got back home when I was born. Stuck a C on the end of the first name. She was homesick for Paris.
Marc, how did you become a walking encyclopedia of music?
It just happens that way. I love music, as you do. I love pop culture, and I just love the people who create this stuff. They're artists, and I love artists, as everybody knows.
At what point do people start referring you to as an encyclopedia? I mean, at some point, you're like, you're about a
Never.
book. Yeah, I mean, like that's how you were. Yeah, I was. You're like, that's how people talk to me about you. They're like, walking encyclopedia. Knows everything about every movie. It knows everything about every song from the 50s, 60s, 70s on, and every TV theme song ever.
I just love it, Jeff. I just love it. When you're passionate, you know what you're all about. And for me, music is our life, music is our history, and music is what unites everybody. So for me, I just love the stuff.
I want to dive into some TV theme songs with you, but I do want to kind of mention, I loved diving into Anatomy of 55 More Songs.
Thank you.
I really love that type of kind of historic deep dive. Like, here's a song, talk to this person, we talk to this person, here's some background, here's what people thought, here's what's really happened, all that kind of, but just enough.
Yeah, what's unusual about the book is if I've done my job correctly, I disappear, right? In other words, no matter what song I'm writing about, I've got the person who wrote it, the person who recorded it, and they're talking to the reader. It's an oral history, in effect. That person, I've used that person's words to convey the information to the reader. So the reader, many people tell me it's almost like I've had conversations with all these people myself. That's the goal, to put the reader in front of these people and let them hear, what Donovan or Mick Jagger or Joni Mitchell sound like. Let them hear directly from those artists. That's the novelty. That's the real grabber.
You know what? You're right. Now that you say that, that is exactly how it was. I'm like talking to Bernie Taupin myself, learning about Rocket Man. It's a good style.
I did all the heavy lifting, and you get all the benefit. It's like I hunted for the food and you're at the restaurant eating. But that's how I want it. That's how, that sensation. I want you to feel what he sounded like. I want you to feel, the artist talking about what they did.
This is your second book specifically on, you've written 5 books, but this is the second oral music history book. You've covered like over 100 songs in the 2 books. How did you get everyone to talk to you?
The column at the Wall Street Journal had a great reputation. People knew the column and they wanted to actually be part of it and to be able to talk to me and know that they were going to be treated fairly and that the interview wasn't about trash or rehab or ex-girlfriends. It was merely about the art. I mean, I remember Steven Tyler, he says, okay, what's this going to be about? And I told him, I said, it's just about the art, Steven. I'm not interested in anything else. He goes, God bless you, Marc Myers. I mean, these people are artists and they're never treated that way. They're always treated gossip and all kinds of dirt, trash and drugs and wrecking hotel rooms. This was just about what they created, and it was a relief for them to finally be able to talk about that.
I loved every second of it.
Thank you.
Where does all the TV theme song history come in?
Comes from sitting in front of the television set as a kid, watching everything as much, watching as much TV as I did. It's not that I was addle-headed and never studied or opened a book. I just found TV fascinating, that there was this world inside this box, and I could change from channel to channel. And these television shows were amazing at creating a mood, at creating a feeling, at creating a sensibility for young kids, to the point of what we're going to talk about today. I love the theme songs. The theme songs were jazzy, they were snazzy, they were upbeat, they were moody. Depending upon the show, they really did a great job in 44 seconds of making you feel something. And that to me is a real craft.
And for some reason, at some point, they kind of walked away from, the whole industry sort of walked away from, even trying to make iconic TV theme songs and openings.
It was an era in time. It was an era in time when people had moods. People weren't glued to their phones. People, were excited about what they were watching. There wasn't that much diversity in media then. There was no internet. All you could do was turn on the TV or the radio, and the TV was the hardest thing you could turn on because your parents were screaming at you to turn it off. So if you could get some time to watch these things and you could feel and fall into it, the theme songs really swept you away.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing just throughout my entire life, just singing. When we were talking pre-interview, if you will, I guess, I'm like, yeah, but we got to talk about Gilligan's Island, which we'll get to, but it's like,
we're going to get there. Put your TV dinner in now. Yeah. Put the roast turkey TV dinner on with the apple cobbler, and that'll come out.
That is exactly what I thought of. The apple cobbler, which is too hot on the outside and cold on the inside, or the opposite.
Exactly.
It was like, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Get the turkey
Hungry Man meals. It was like
Swanson's TV dinner. Get it ready on the little standing folding table that you put on your lap, and you're good to go for the TV themes.
Where should we start?
Let's start with Bewitched. And in fact, before I even say a word, why don't you play the first one I gave you? Let's just do the Bewitched TV themes, which will clue people in. And I can give you some facts that most people don't really know about this particular theme song.
All right.
So the pilot that was created for Bewitched, which ran from 1964 to 1972, the pilot used Frank Sinatra's Witchcraft. They were going to use Frank Sinatra's Witchcraft for this show. But the producers suddenly looked at the cost for rights to use it and said, forget about it. So Jack Keller, composer, came up with a theme with lyrics by Howard Greenfield. Now, Keller also composed Breaking Up Is Hard to Do, Calendar Girl, Where the Boys Are. He's an old hand when it came to songs. But once they came up with a new theme and Greenfield's lyrics were there, they didn't want to pay Jerry Vale $2,500 to do the vocal. Jerry Vale was going to do the vocal to their song, the Bewitched song. And besides, they said, we don't want to pay that kind of money. And you know what? The lyrics are distracting. Let's just leave them out. Let's just do it as an instrumental. So a guy named Warren Barker orchestrated the instrumental, and he was inspired by an album that he recorded in 1959. Get this, wait for it. It was called A Musical Touch of Far Away Places. That album had all these odd instruments on there that actor William Holden had collected. What struck his fancy, what made him think of that album, is that he remembered that there were bells and tinkling sounds, which were all perfect for Samantha's nose wiggle in Bewitched, right? The cartoon that was the Hanna-Barbera cartoon that was showing while this was going on. Then, after the song became the theme, it was picked up. Keller and Greenfield's lyrics came back, and the song was picked up by Peggy Lee and Steve Lawrence in 1965. There was actually a vocal version. The original vocal version became a hit for Steve Lawrence. Let's do number 2, which is Steve Lawrence singing the same song as the theme to Bewitched, the TV show, except with a Don Costa arrangement. He's now got lyrics to sing.
Bewitched, bewitched, you've got me in your spell. Bewitched, bewitched, you know your craft so well. Before I knew what you were doing, I looked in your eyes.
And that's not on the show. That never appeared on the show. Those lyrics were set aside just for the instrumental, and those really quirky little noises from strange instruments to illustrate the witchiness of Elizabeth Montgomery flying around in the cartoon illustration that opened up that show. Peggy Lee had a hit with it. There were a whole bunch of people who had a hit with the lyrics version. The songwriters got a double. They got paid for the TV show every time it was on, and then they sold it to singers who then, recorded it, and they made money that way as well. Great theme. One of the great themes. Don't you think?
I love that theme. It had a little Frank Sinatra vibe.
Yeah, it did.
The Steve Lawrence vocals.
Yeah. Well, Don Costa, it had that almost Nelson Riddle-ish. Don Costa kind of created that, sort of that Sinatra feel, but it was Costa. It has a lot of energy.
Love it. Who was your favorite, Darren?
Probably York.
It's amazing how many other characters switched, like Marilyn from the Munsters. I think that's the only one anyone ever thinks about or would say or make a joke about.
I think there were 2 Lois Lanes also in The Adventures of Superman. There was a Lois Lane in the beginning for a couple of episodes, and then I think Noel Neill came in. But yeah, you're right. There are a bunch of switches. I think in the case of Bewitched, I think the first Darren got sick, was too ill to do the series, and they brought the second one in to handle it that way. It wasn't like he was bad or fans didn't like him. It was that he wasn't well.
Right. All right. How about Leave It to Beaver?
Don't you love this? I mean, I've always loved this theme. I've always loved this show. When you watch this show now, it's, to hear the Beaver, it's like, gee, Wally, how come adults have to lie so much? Why are they always lying to kids? I mean, he was always posing these really interesting philosophical questions to which you would say, yeah, why do parents lie so much to kids? So the Beaver, was this early philosophical figure. And the family was, of course, classic nuclear family. But the Beaver and Wally, the interactions between those two was just great, really great. The theme was actually an old children's song called The Toy Parade. 3 or 4 songwriters, I think it was 3 songwriters on it. David Kahn, Melvin Leonard, and Mort Green wrote that original children's song about Toy Parade. I think it was a holiday song originally, but they used it as the basis for the theme to Leave It to Beaver. And the theme was actually, the show ran from 57 to 63, and the theme adaptation was fairly wooden, right? Over the first 5 seasons, it was kind of like, it had this waddling feel, almost like the music you'd hear if you're watching penguins walk around. Before I keep going, let's first listen to the Toy Parade, the song that the Leave It to Beaver theme was based on. This is the original children's song.
Here they come, here they come. Come with a rum-tea-tum, they're having a toy parade. A tin giraffe with a fife and drum is leading the Cubie Brigade. A gay young cat in a...
Sort of deliciously insipid, right? I mean, it's like you can't bear too much of it, but at the same time, you can hear the Beaver theme sort of bleeding through. Let's listen to the theme itself, which ran for 5 seasons. And this is that theme that sort of had this waddling feel where you feel like you're watching penguins walk around. Strange tempo they used for it, but let's give it a listen. Sort of wooden until the last season. And in the final season, they brought in a guy named Pete Rugolo, who was a big jazz arranger, arranged for Stan Kenton, arranged for June Christie, arranged his own albums, big arranger, but jazzy. And he gave it this really jazzy snap. This is only used in the final season of Leave It to Beaver. This is Pete Rugelow's theme with a jazzy, much jazzier feel.
Much jazzier. Here we go.
It's that last bit, ba-da, 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 ba-da. They
Strong
go,
finish. Finish.
Great stuff. Really, really great.
You know what song sticks in my head with the Beaver, with Leave It to Beaver is, I hope I'm not making this up in my head, but for some reason, Take the Long Way Home by Supertramp, I believe was just played in the reunion movie. I think when he's going home for like the funeral of his father and stuff like that way back when. And like every time I hear that song, I picture him on the bus. And I think I didn't make it up.
I can't watch the reunion movie. To me, the original is so classic. It's so precious. It's like a Dayglow version of the Mona Lisa. The Mona Lisa was just fine as far as I'm concerned.
They did a whole new series.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a big deal to like do the reunion movies, but they did a full-on series.
You can run that show today. This country went downhill when Leave It to Beaver went off the air because kids lost a primer in that show. It sort of taught them the ethical way to behave, why things were weird, bullies. I mean, it really covered the whole spectrum, but in a very funny way. I don't really mean the country went downhill. I just mean, our values or something. You could run that show today. And if you expose kids to that show today, we might be a better place as a result of it. That's how good that show is. You can see him on YouTube. You can watch him for yourself.
I loved Leave It to Beaver.
Here we are. Yeah. I thought you were coming to Gilligan's Island because I know you love that one.
Oh, I love Gilligan's Island too. I was just kind of with the Beav and Wally and Eddie. Eddie to me was the best character. You look lovely, Mrs. Cleaver. You look lovely.
Everybody knew somebody like that. And the parents, his mother never understood. Like the father kind of caught on, but the mother was always taken with him. I don't see what's wrong. I don't see why you see that in Eddie. He's such a nice young man. She was really conned, by the grift.
Oh man. All right. So Gilligan's Island.
Gilligan's Island, 1964 through 1967.
Hands down, one of the best theme songs ever.
It's a good one. I mean, it's not among my favorite because the show was never for me. It always felt a little weird to me. The whole thing, the whole thing was, strange. It was sort of like it seemed to be taking place in some kind of an amusement park set of an island or something. It never felt authentic, and I never quite got the point. But as I can see Jeff tilting his head slightly to the right, I'll give it to you that it had great writing. There's no doubt about that.
I just thought it was super fun. It's funny when, it's like, why did they have luggage if it was only a 3-hour tour?
That's what I mean. The visual was all
like
wrong.
But in the genre of theme songs that explain the entire premise of the show, it's right up there. It's right up there.
Well, the only thing that compares is Beverly Hillbillies, right? Which is done the same way, sort of a ballad, a recitation of how things came to be. And I guess, for that matter, Green Acres, right? It's also handled the same way. But the Ballad of Gilligan's Isle, which is what the theme was actually called, that's music by George Weil and lyrics by Sherwood Schwartz. Now, the pilot, when they created the pilot, the theme was a calypso by the John Williams, much younger John Williams, Star Wars John Williams. He came up with the song based on a calypso. Actually, I found it because this is the pilot theme song. Pilot is for listeners who might not know what a pilot is, it's like a demo. And for those who don't know what a demo is, it's a first episode that they put together to give the bosses a sense of what this thing is going to be about. And the bosses will look at it and say, I don't like this. And why don't we cast somebody else for that? And maybe the theme song should be a little bit different. That's where everybody weighs in who matters. So the pilot was the first one produced for the Bosses, and the theme song was by John Williams, and it was a calypso.
In tropical sea is a tropic port. Vacation fun is the favorite sport. This is the place where the tourists flock, renting the boats at the busy dock. Two secretaries from USA sail on a Mino this lovely day. A high school teacher.
That's about as bad as it gets, but it's a scratch, right? They're just putting something out there, and you can just sort of see the really heavy-set guy with suspenders and the cigar in his mouth saying, I think this is great, but you gotta lose that theme song. Gotta lose that theme song. Yeah, it just wasn't happening, or it was too kitschy. I think they wanted just something a little more pure. Now, the theme that you know and love, Jeff, actually wasn't used in season 1. Season 1 was a folk group. A folk group did the original theme song called the Wellingtons. And I found that one as well.
Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale of a fateful trip that started from this tropic port aboard this tiny ship. The mate was a mighty sailing man, the skipper brave and sure. 5 passengers set sail that day for a 3-hour tour, a 3-hour tour.
So in 1964, what's popular at that point in time? Well, folk music. And, just before that goes on, when this whole thing was being put together, the Beatles hadn't even arrived yet in February of 64. So folk was what they figured the kids would like to hear, and that would get them to come back. And of course, after the first season, folk is out and rock is in. Let's listen to the theme song we know and love, which is really more of a sea shanty by a group that was called the Eligibles. The Eligibles sounds to me like it's a jingle group that was brought forward. They just scrapped the whole folk thing and just brought in the jingle people to do it. So season number 2 and beyond is the theme that we know, the sea shanty by the Eligibles.
Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale of a fateful trip that started from this tropic point aboard this tiny ship. The mate was a mighty sailing man, the skipper brave and sure. 5 passengers set sail that day for a 3-hour tour, a 3-hour tour.
Now, what they did there is they jumped it up. There's a bit of a jazzy feel, and if you remember what you just heard, there's a piccolo shooting through there, that high-pitched flute sound. So they kind of made it novelty, and what they did is instead of the folk group, they amped up what I call the addiction. That's the sugar in the cereal, so to speak. The jumpier, livelier theme song would be more likely to pull kids back to the show. That's what these intros were about. The intros did 2 things. They set the mood of what you're about to watch. So you've got this whimsical theme there on Gilligan's Island, and it's jumpy. But it also is to get the kids addicted to coming back to watch the show. No different than adding sugar into the cereal. And that was the sugar there. Which of the 3 did you like best, Jeff?
Definitely partial towards the third one. I will have to listen to the first one again.
Yeah, you made the $1 million. That's the $1 million decision, the third one. That's the one the Suits decided on.
It is a much catchier version.
And it's jumpier. It bounces. The second one was sort of this folk harmony, very Washington Square Park and 3 guitars singing. But the third one really has a sauce going on in it. It's skippier, it's jumpier. It almost sounds like you're jumping on a trampoline when you're listening to it.
So the important question, Ginger or Marianne?
It's the whole thing. For me, it's hard for me to even get excited about that show. I like the theme. I like the theme because I like the sung through narrative, like on Green Acres and like on Beverly Hillbillies. The narration where they're setting you up or giving you a story. They're telling you it's a preamble. They're giving you a sense of what the show is about. So I like that. But the show itself and the characters and everything just never got me. But what did get me are the next 2 we're going to talk about.
All right.
Which is, you want to set it up, or are you familiar with these themes?
I'm not exactly. Room 222.
I can tell you never watched it because it was actually Room 222 is what the show is called. What we're going to do here is I'm going to show you the similarity between 2 show theme songs that were about 10 years apart, which is kind of interesting. I didn't realize it until I was about to interview Ed Begley Jr. about 2 months ago and did research and suddenly realized that the two theme songs were very close, were very, very close. The first one we're going to listen to is Room 222. That's a series that ran from 1969 to 1974. It was written by Jerry Goldsmith. The creator of Room 222 is James Brooks, James L. Brooks. And it took place at they didn't even bother with a fictional high school. They chose Walt Whitman High School in LA, at least for the exterior, for the intro. Obviously, the interior shots are all being done on a set. But the setting for the show was a real high school that's still there today, Walt Whitman High School in LA. The fascinating thing about this show is the diversity. You had a Black teacher and a Black male teacher and a Black female teacher. You had a young teacher. There was quite a mix there. You had guest stars like Terry Garr, Richard Dreyfuss. Each week they had this amazing guest. Nancy Wilson, I remember, was on as a guest star, the singer. So the show introduced this concept of stars on the rise being guest stars for whatever reason. Maybe they're the mean father of a student or whatever it is. They played some sort of a role. So Room 222, let's do the theme first, because then I want to show you which theme. Once the theme is in the listener's head, then I can tell you which theme sounds a lot like it. The early theme opened with an acoustic guitar. This is what's interesting about the next two. The first theme that they used opened with an acoustic guitar and a recorder. A recorder, like the recorders that kids play in school, to sort of create the school feel that you were going to school. By 1972, again, this show runs from 1969 to 74. By 1972, they're playing electronic keyboards. It's a harpsichord and electric keyboard. Let's listen to the Room 222 theme. It's just a beautiful theme. I mean, for me, no other theme sounds as 70s, except Mary Tyler Moore, obviously. But the Room 222 just had that feel. Now, what theme song sounds a lot like that? Saint Elsewhere, which ran from 1982 to 1988. Instead of a campus, a high school campus, it's a hospital, of course. And that was done by Dave Grusin. And by the early 1980s, you've got synthesizers. The interesting thing about both of these themes, and we'll play the St. Elsewhere one in a second, both had this studious feel, signaling a serious but playful setting, right? Room 222 is high school, it's buckling down, but at the same time, you can hear the social aspect of it, you can hear the playfulness of it. The same thing with St. Elsewhere. Let's listen. This is the St. Elsewhere theme. So that's all synthesizers. You got a Moog in there, a mini Moog, and probably a Prophet 5. There's all keyboards running in there. If you compare the two, Room 222 and St. Elsewhere, has the almost identical feel in terms of the build and then the sort of seriousness of it, but the playfulness of it. Don't you think?
Yeah, I could see where one may have been inspired by the other. A little update.
Yeah, it's not an exact. I'm not saying that it was a lift or a copy at all. It's simply they're similar shows in that there's a campus, a serious campus, hospital versus a high school, and that there is a similar build, a similar approach, except one has acoustic sound with a recorder and a acoustic guitar, and the other has all synthesizers. Interesting.
Both very lovely. So many great ones. I've been thinking of other ones. I've been thinking of ones as been popping in my head. But how about That Girl?
What a great series that was, 1966 through 71. It sort of predates Mary Tyler Moore. It's an unmarried woman. This is Marlo Thomas was the star. Unmarried woman trying to make it in New York. There didn't seem to be a career involved the way it was with Mary, but it's a series. She's working a series of temporary jobs, and she's dating her boyfriend, and she's in love with the city and in love with working. It's an early take on that. Again, it's the mid-1960s when season 1 starts. The first 4 seasons, the show used an instrumental theme composed by Earl Hagen, who did the Dick Van Dyke Show theme, the I Spy theme, and the Mod Squad theme. And he also whistled the Andy Griffith Show theme. This is Earl Hagen, a real seasoned pro. In the 5th and final season, there was finally a vocal version with lyrics by Sam Denoff. But the theme is so beautiful. I mean, it really is. Let's listen to number 11. This is the instrumental theme that lasted for the first 4 seasons of That Girl, which ran from 66 to 71. So that's jazzy, but it also was a show that was for girls, which was interesting. It was to show girls that here's this woman who is excited by the city, is excited by work, is excited by the buildings. And of course, the buildings that they show are all the new glass buildings that went up that weren't made of stone, that went straight up. And the architecture is all 6th Avenue, where all that is. It's just this very breezy, funny, upbeat show, but it was aimed at girls. The final season, 5th and final season, there's that vocal version with Sam Denoff. Let's listen to that.
Diamonds, daisies, snowflakes, that girl, chestnuts, rainbows, springtime, is that girl. She's tinsel on a tree. She's everything that every girl should be.
A great seg to Mary Tyler Moore. But wasn't that a great theme song?
It is. I feel New Girl must have used that as an inspiration for.
Yeah, that's true.
So.
That's true. But it's bright and it's alive and it's exciting and it's optimistic. Marlo Thomas was just very, very special in there.
Sorry to interrupt. Have to take a quick break. Want to thank everyone for their support of the sponsors. When you support the sponsors, you're supporting us here at Classic Conversations, and that's how we keep the lights on. And now back to my conversation with Marc Myers. We're diving deep into the TV theme song of Mary Tyler Moore. Enjoy.
The Mary Tyler Moore Show, 1970 to 1977. The theme, Love Is All Around, written and performed by Sonny Curtis. Who's Sonny Curtis? He was a member of the Crickets, Buddy Holly and the Crickets.
Oh, wow.
Joined the group in 1958. It was written for the show. A friend of Sonny's worked for Williams Price, the agency that represented Mary Tyler Moore, and his friend told him in 1970, hey, this new show needs a theme song. You want to take a crack at it? And Sonny says, yeah, I'll take it. I'll try it out. And he comes up with something, and he goes down and shows up where he's supposed to play it for people. And he goes, who am I singing it to? And they tell him James Brooks, because James Brooks, also created Mary Tyler Moore. And he sang it for James Brooks, who then called somebody else into the room. He sang it for the two of them. James Brooks called more people into the room. Long story short, he sang the song 10 times as James Brooks suddenly filled this large room with people from the show, and everybody loved the theme right off the bat. It's arranged by Patrick Williams. Sonny's singing it, and it's his song, but the build and the orchestration around it is Patrick Williams. The first season, this is kind of interesting. They had to change the lyrics after the first season of the intro. It ends with, you might just make it after all. If you remember the theme, she's driving into Minneapolis. I think it's Minneapolis, St. Paul. She's driving in to hopefully make it there, and, her first day on the job at the TV station. And it ends, you might just make it after all. Well, one of the bosses scribbles on a note, and the next year, and he says, we got to change the end. Sonny says, why? Guy says, she's made it. She's there. She's working. You got to give me a new line. So the line they came up with was, You're gonna make it after all. You're gonna. They just changed the wording a little bit. So you're there, you're doing it, you're trying to get ahead, and that's the bit. Season 1 had a soft intro. Season 2 through 6 had a hard guitar intro, and season 7 added a horn on top of the guitar. But let's listen to the intros. Let's start with season 1. This is a very soft intro. Most people probably don't even remember it unless they watched season 1 and remember this. But listen to the intro to season 1. Now, season 2 through 6 had this big guitar sound, really big guitar sound, because, by season 2, 1971, 72, hard rock, album rock, concert rock is upon us, and they needed to sort of shift the feeling of it. So this is seasons 2 through 6.
And she's made it, so we got to step it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Who can turn the world on with her smile? Who can take...
And the season 7 intro, they sort of dampened the guitar and they put a horn on top of it, which just cuts the hard edge of it. I don't know why. It may well be that by 1977, things are shifting and they just wanted a softer feel. Keep in mind that the changes aren't done because somebody has a new idea. They're done because they held about $800,000 worth of focus groups, and people like this or they didn't like that, or someone is saying, it sounds a little stale. Can we update it? And then when they decide to update it, they've got to take into consideration the zeitgeist. What's happening then? 1977 or 76 is very different than 1970. They got to add something a little different to make it sound like 1976. This is season 7 intro to the Mary Tyler Moore theme, Love Is All Around, with a horn on top of the guitar that opens.
Who can turn the world on with her smile?
You also have timpani drums in there. Boom, 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 which is interesting too, just to sort of beef it up a bit. Those themes were all created for that feeling. Again, this was aimed at women as well. The early theme had a softer feel. They figured that would be the way in because there's trepidation. Mary doesn't know what she's going to be facing. Season 2 through 6, bigger sound. She's making it. She's on top of the game. The show's a hit. And that last season, it was probably they knew they were on their way out and just wanted to sort of quiet it down a little bit. Which one did you like best?
For the Mary Tyler Moore one, they all seem okay to me.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
There wasn't because what I started thinking about as you were kind of pointing a lot of these things out is I don't remember really shows changing their theme songs. Seinfeld was always Seinfeld. I don't think Cheers ever changed the Cheers theme song, right?
I'm not sure about that or Seinfeld. I believe there were changes to the theme song. Once these shows made it, they start to do certain things. You wouldn't notice it, but it's all subconscious. There's reasons. That bass that's in there, that funky bass in Seinfeld may have been turned up, and it wasn't that way in the beginning. I'd have to research and find all the themes that were used and do a deep dive to really figure it out. Hey, how do you like that? Angling for coming back on your podcast to talk about this.
And you're always welcome. This is fascinating stuff. It's just interesting to me. She made it. We got to change it. It was well, I mean, they're already on the island. We don't need to change the lyrics of Gilligan's Island. They know they're on, it's we get it.
Yet some lyrics were changed on Gilligan's Island. Certain things were changed, slight things, line or two here and there, and just the feel of it. At first, they were selling an exotic show in the Caribbean. After the first season, when it caught on, they were selling, something to kids who might be a little bit older. So they used folk, because it was more adult. It was a more mature show. So they used folk to get maybe the preteens who were listening to Dylan and listening to Joan Baez. And then finally they really punch it out and it's just jingly. They just pour the sugar right in the cereal. And that's what you're listening to there. That's what's fascinating about doing the deep dive on these themes, hearing how they change these things subtly to get people hooked on them, which is really what's fascinating.
To me, it was just okay, I had in listening to the Gilligan's Island playbacks, I remembered hearing the Calypso one on some documentary. Okay.
Interesting.
I'd forgotten about it, but I remember them doing something and I didn't know it actually ever aired. I think it was just like, this was like a first run at this song. I never guessed in a million years that the other two versions existed, because to me, there's only one version. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Right.
even if Cheers has changed in my head, there's only one version.
That's the genius of these guys. I mean, they need to make changes that are psychologically messing with you. You see what I'm saying? By changing up, like for instance, Captain Crunch probably looked one way when it came out, but then they realized like to get kids to reach from the supermarket and yank at the box and pester their parents, they got to add yellow. I mean, this is all psychological stuff that they figure out. Just like the supermarket, they make very conscious decisions about packaging in the supermarket. That's what they did with these intros. Very conscious decisions to make subtle changes to get more kids hooked on these shows. Hooked sounds like a bad word, so I don't want to say hooked, but more interested and more aggressive in how they insisted to their parents that they be allowed to watch it.
Right. How do we keep the kids off drugs and alcohol? Get them hooked on Gilligan's Island.
TV themes, yeah, and sugar and cereal. Listen, if you think they're messing with you on those themes, you should have seen the advertising that went on a lot of these shows back then, between games and cereals and gum and everything you can imagine.
I have to spend the rest of the night just reevaluating and re-examining my entire life.
I'm sorry
to see where I've been manipulated potentially.
I feel really sorry now.
I know
it's gonna cost you a lot of therapy money.
What if like I look back and I realize, oh my God, maybe Gilligan's Island wasn't a great show. Mark has opened my eyes. I was manipulated by just a catchy song.
That was their job. That's the job. That was the Beatles' job. The Beatles' job was to get you in the first three verses. The reason why most Beatles songs start with the title of the song is so that you would remember it when you went to the record store. Help, Can't Buy Me Love, She Loves You. The reason why that title of that song is in the first few measures is so that you'd remember it. It's a product. Singles and theme songs and food, it's all products. They have to be sold. You must be hooked.
You've destroyed me.
Want to do one last one?
Do one last one.
All right. This show only aired for a year. Most people don't even know it. It was called He and She, and it starred Richard Benjamin and Paula Prentice, who happened to be married. She was beautiful. He was a very handsome guy. The theme was composed by Jerry Fielding, and it's a wonderful, wonderful instrumental theme. Actually, I think it has lyrics, now that I think about it, or maybe not. Anyway, it is a beautiful theme. Let's give a listen to the theme to He and She, 1967 through 68. Now, it was a whole bunch of montages of Paula Prentice and Richard Benjamin together on the beach, together here. It was all done in New York City. But there's this one scene in this, you can see it on YouTube. You can go to YouTube and type in He and She, and you can see the visual. There's this quintessential sort of, anytime they showed New York, someone had to be running through Central Park, and they run through all of these pigeons. Pigeons fly all over the place, and there's this flute that runs through it to sort of indicate the birds are flying. It really is a lovely theme. The writing was lousy, and the show just never got off the ground. Ran from 67 to 68. It was over in a sneeze, but the theme song is still, for me, it's still just it's sort of this sort of tuxedo version of That Girl.
And it was partially an inspiration and opened the doors for the Mary Tyler Moore and specifically the Ted Baxter character.
Exactly. Yeah. There you have it.
Very interesting. Yeah, the other ones I started thinking of, talk about another time, would be like Welcome Back, Kotter or Cheers. Right. Those are some of those.
John Sebastian. What a great song that was. It's a huge hit.
Oh, Greatest American Hero.
Yeah. Love Boat.
The Love Boat, Paul Williams. Yeah. There's so many. I can still sing. Love, exciting and new.
Or Mannix, Mission Impossible. They set the mood of what you were about to watch, and their job was to hook you. And when I mean hook you, I mean get you aggressive enough that you can start negotiating with your parents to be able to watch it. Yes, I'll do my homework. I promise. I'll rake the leaves. No, I'll do it. I promise, Dad, if you just let me watch the show. I mean, kids became great negotiators because their parents wouldn't let them watch TV. If it wasn't for television, an entire generation would have no idea how to negotiate.
Well, this has been an amazing history lesson. You make history fun, Marc Myers. Thank you.
Jeff. And if you want me to come back to talk just about the book, listeners should go check out Anatomy of 55 More Songs. 55, every hit, you know. Wouldn't you say the listener knows every single hit?
Yeah, I was reading through it and I was like, oh, because I wasn't sure if we were going to talk about that. And I started to, I'll just cherry pick the ones that I love. And I'm sitting there next thing I know, I'm writing down all 58 songs. And I'm like, all right, to hell with it. But yeah, I mean, it's like Ain't No Mountain High Enough, The Weight by the Band, Bad Mood Rising, She's Gone by Hall & Oates, She's Gone. Come and Get Your Love, which I love that song, mostly because Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
Fly Like an Eagle, Barracuda, Go Your Own Way. I mean, the list goes on and on.
And in each case, I interviewed the artist on how the decisions were made behind each song.
It's an incredible, it's sort of like what we just talked about for the TV, but about those particular songs, and goes even deeper. I mean, you should write that book about the TV song.
Yeah, except I'm probably the only one who still remembers some of these songs. But it's a lot of these. The problem is that it is a great book, but a lot of these composers and arrangers, they're all gone, and there's just nobody left to sort of get firsthand information from. I'd have to sort of start in the 90s and work backward. They're just great songs, and I think listeners, you can go to YouTube and watch episodes of any of these shows. And you can listen to everything that we played today is on YouTube.
It's all there. Marc Myers, thank you so much for hanging out with me.
It was a pleasure. Thanks so much. I really appreciate being with you and also going through these. It's a lot of fun.
All right, how amazing was Marc Myers? We just might make it after all. All right, check out his book, Anatomy of 55 More Songs, The Oral History of Top Hits that Changed Rock, R&B, and Soul. He has a bunch of other books as well. I'll put links in the show notes, but those are amazing deep dives, so check those out. Hope you enjoyed our little trip down memory lane with some of these classic TV theme songs. Well, with the interview over, it can only mean one thing. I know, episode 310 has come to an end. Another huge thanks to my guest, Marc Myers, and of course, a huge thank you to all of you for coming back week after week. It means the world to me, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Classic Conversations. If you like what you heard, don't be shy and give us a follow on your favorite podcast app. Also, why not go ahead and tell all your friends about the show? You strike us as the kind of person that people listen to. Thanks in advance for spreading the word, and we'll catch you next time on Classic Conversations.